He was in the first class of wildlife police. That first opportunity we tried after, I say decades, but decades and decades, as a diocese to ordain Kanaka and other local clergy. We actually went decades, probably back to the time of being a missionary diocese, without ordaining many people. 1, 2, every 5 or 6 years. If I can say anything, it's the local formation program that has redefined us as a diocese, sending more people to seminaries to come home has redefined us as a diocese. We'll just start. So I asked Nahoa if he could speak about Ho'oponopono, but not exactly. I know I was ambiguous, and so whatever he says is what I asked for. Well, what I wanted to get at is, what does it mean for us for the Pono as a diocese? As we look together to call the next bishop, how do we live in the Diana? I said, oh, okay. So it was a big order, and Nahoa agreed to do it. So you all be nice to him.
How do I follow that introduction? Aloha nui kākou. It's always a pleasure to be the last speaker after lunch. And it may surprise you, but I'm not going to take the full hour, so you may get out of here early. I don't have any slides for you. I don't have any cute handouts. Somebody asked me why not. I said, because we are an oral culture. I'm not going to memorize it. Yeah. I'm going to repeat it again. Seriously, I'm very glad to be here. And Bishop Lau, of course, asked me to speak to you all about the merits of having a process using Ho'oponopono as a discernment tool as we approach the selection process for our new bishop. Before I begin, though, I think you should know, and I should tell you why I feel I'm knowledgeable to speak on this subject, since you probably say, well, why is Nahoa talking about this? You should know, first of all, that with indigenous people, we usually do not self-promote ourselves. So this is very odd for me to do this. I've been a student of the traditional Hawaiian dispute resolution process known as Ho'oponopono, with a traditional practitioner whose name is Kumu Earl Kawaha, for about 10 years now. And while I can say that I have learned a lot, I'm by no means an expert. In fact, I have just enough knowledge to make me dangerous. Kumu learned the art of Ho'oponopono from his mother. Her name is Genevieve Kawaha from Alawa Molokai. And her family line comes from a long line of powerful kahuna, or priests. But of course, that's for another hour, which we won't cover. In the hour that we have together, or less, we cannot hope to cover all aspects of Ho'oponopono. So I'm not going to be delving down into the nitty-gritty. Instead, I'm going to try and give you a 37,000-foot level view, and just really give you some broad principles, which I hope will help you better understand and appreciate Ho'oponopono as a widely used tool to traditionally resolve conflicts within the Hawaiian community. When we think of alternative dispute resolution processes like ho'oponopono, we may wonder whether it can be as effective as other Western forms of dispute resolution. For Native Hawaiians, the power to do anything, including the power to resolve and heal disputes, is based on mana. And that is the spiritual energy that is devoted to such a task. That same mana can be found in our biblical stories of Jesus and the many miracles that he performed throughout the Bible, such as turning water into wine, feeding the 5,000 with only 5 loaves, 2 fishes. What are referred to as miracles in our Christian teaching can also be looked at as mana in our Hawaiian culture. And by coincidence, the bishop had made copies of this insert. It's actually the 2003 resolution that was passed at our convention, which talks about mana. What's important about this resolution is that we agreed to take these values, which include mana, malama, and ono, and we agreed to incorporate it into the overall life and work of the church in all areas of ministry in the diocese. We noted that all aspects of God's creation are imbued with mana, which is defined as a spiritual value that comes from being created by God. And so I'm going to read a little bit from this insert, in case you kind of glanced over it very quickly. In the resolution, it says, the first, and this is defining mana, it says the first is that all aspects of God's creation are imbued with mana, spiritual value that comes from being created by God. Care must be taken to respect the mana of the land and the sea, the plants, the animals, other people, and most important, the mana of God, the creator and source of all mana. Our own mana should not be neglected or misused. Let's rub that. In ho'oponopono, the haku, or facilitator for the meeting, will use his mana to essentially change the attitude and behavior of the parties towards a resolution. When he does this, or she does this, we say in Hawaiian, mana I kaleo, which means there is spiritual energy in his voice, or her voice, or the way that he carries on, the way that the haku carries on the dispute resolution process. At a minimum, we certainly should be reminded of these 3 values as we begin our selection process for our new bishop, and use these values as a guide to direct the process. So, ho'oponopono literally means to make right or proper, to bring the parties back to a state of balance and well-being prior to the dispute. In early Hawaiian society, ho'oponopono was used regularly by families to resolve family disputes when there was pilikia, or trouble within the family. The same principles can be applied for disputes outside the family, but there are qualifications on how this traditional art form is to be used. Many of us use the word ho'oponopono in casual conversation as a synonym for mediation, but there are significant differences between the two. In a nutshell, the essential principles of underlying ho'oponopono, as I have learned, it's all about 2 things. 1, truth-telling, and the second being God-centered. You don't have both. You may end up resolving an issue, but it is through a different mediation process that involves a clinical or social analysis and evaluation of the problem, not ho'oponopono. First of all, what does it mean to tell the truth? Well, it means that both parties must be willing to tell the truth completely and unconditionally. It is absolutely essential that the parties agree to this in order for Ho'oponopono to succeed. Responses given during Ho'oponopono sessions like yes, but, or he or she or that other person did it, not me, are not statements that accept complete responsibility for what happened. Telling the truth only happens if the parties are willing to accept and trust the power of God is working within and through them to resolve the problem at hand. Second, and more importantly, what does it mean to be God-centered? It's critical that the parties believe in God. This does not necessarily mean that you need to attend church regularly as proof of your belief, nor does it mean that you believe in a Christian God. But you do need to believe in Keapua rather than saying that you are, quote-unquote, spiritual. Questions such as, does your family pray? Do you or your family go to church? Or do you believe in God? Help the haku screen whether parties are suitable candidates for Ho'oponopono. At practically every step in the process, the parties pray to Keapua for guidance and direction in resolving the dispute. Thus, believing in God is critical because in Ho'oponopono it is not the haku or decision maker who has the power to resolve the dispute, but the will of God, working through the haku and the parties involved to resolve the dispute itself. Now I just want to give you a very basic overview of how the process works. In Ho'oponopono, the haku usually begins with an opening prayer to bring all the parties under the realm of Keapua, followed by a statement of the issue to be discussed. That statement is known in Hawaiian as kukulu kumuhana. From there, the haku addresses the problem, which may contain one or more subset of problems, each of which must be addressed separately. Sometimes the issue that may be labeled as a disputed item is in fact not the issue at all that needs to be resolved. And the real issue is something deeper and more complex that occurred, say for example, many years ago between certain family members. These issues or problems are called hihia in Hawaiian, which means entanglement or problems. Yeah. Each one must be resolved before the process is complete. I like to think that solving each sub-problem is like unraveling a tangled knotted net, or in Hawaii we like to use the throw nets. So each knot in the net must be carefully unraveled and dealt with by the haku in order for the net to be fully mended and able to be thrown again. The process for untangling each problem is called, in Hawaiian, mahiki, and may take place whenever disputes arise. However, it's important to remember that there is no time frame for resolution. It may take several meetings between the parties over an extended period of time, and at the agreement of the parties in order to fully resolve all of the issues presented by the problem. Thus, Ho'oponopono may not necessarily fit as an acceptable tool to resolve all complaints, all concerns raised during the bishop selection process, which is, as you know, is on a fixed and rigid time frame. During each session with the parties, it is the haku who has the responsibility of discerning the source of eha, or as we say, pain, yeah, that created the pilikia in the first place. Sometimes the source of the eha stems from something that someone outside the party's control has done to one or more of the parties. This illness, or ma'i as we say in Hawaiian, is called ma'i waho, or sickness that occurs from an outside source. This needs to be addressed. More often than not, however, the source of the pilikia comes from something that the party or parties did to themselves to make themselves ill. And this internal sickness is called ma'i loko, or the sickness from within. Both have different methods of treatment in Ho'oponopono. When the ma'i is treated and the parties are at the stage of forgiveness, there is mihi, or a request or offering for forgiveness from the one party, followed by a kala, or acceptance of the forgiveness by the other party or parties. It's the responsibility of the haku to manage all aspects of the hihia, to ensure that the mihi and the kala are done in a genuine and respectful manner before the eyes of Keakua. Not all disputes are the subject of resolution for Ho'oponopono, either because not all of the parties are capable of meeting the God-centered qualifications of Ho'oponopono, or the parties may truly wish to resort to other dispute resolution techniques, like going to court, to resolve their problems. Although I can say Ho'oponopono can occur contemporaneously if the parties decide that they're going to pursue. It does not exclude that process, but it really takes a lot of skill and a lot of determination and the haku needs to be very clear as to why they are involved in that process, in the Ho'oponopono process. So again, I'm not entirely sure how Ho'oponopono would fit in as a tool in our selection process. However, I do agree with the bishop that the underlying principles of Ho'oponopono should be used as a framework whenever we encounter issues or concerns among individuals or groups during the process, because such a process is consistent with our Christian values and teachings that we live by. It's also maybe a very important tool for clergy in their churches when they have these kind of issues. But again, that's for another hour. Mahalo. Thank you very much.